Hey guys, welcome. I want to thank you for tuning in to another video. I'm Dana Claiborne, Language Arts Tutor, and today I am focusing on conclusion paragraphs, which is the final piece of a persuasive essay. I've been on an essay writing track, and today I am sharing a conclusion strategy. And so I'm going to use a PowerPoint version of the guide that I use to share this principle with students in session. So let's go ahead and get started. Switching over to camera 2, and let's hit and get myself on the scene here, and there I am. All right, so I am sharing what I call the call to action, which is one of the more mainstream conclusion styles. Great way to close an essay. And so just want to make sure that we understand where we're at in the essay. The essay format includes an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, 2 depending on which, it could be 2 depending on which style of essay you're using, and then a conclusion paragraph. And so that's what the call to action is. It is a conclusion paragraph. Just want to make sure that's nice and clear. Okay, so what is a call to action? What does a call to action do? Well, just by virtue of what it is exactly what it sounds like. It calls the reader to action, tells the reader to do something by giving them some suggestive advice. So a great way to close an essay is by challenging the reader to do something. What this does is it cements the information or seals it into the mind of the reader by kind of challenging them to take it and apply it, of course. And then just challenging the reader is a great way to cause the information to be memorable, okay? Because they're encouraged to put it into action, okay? So key selling points of the call to action, if you will, right? Okay, so I tell students that there's 2 styles of call to action. You got personal call to action, which is first kind where you tell the reader to do something that only affects his or herself. And then you have what I call the corporate call to action, in which you tell the reader that, tell the reader to do something that could affect them or a large group of people. So if you're telling somebody to start a petition, or you're telling someone to do some kind of corporate effort that could involve not just themselves, that would be a corporate call to action. Most of the time, I find it most appropriate for students to do the personal call to action. Usually that is just an easier fit more often than not, but there are some occasions in which it is beneficial to engage a nice corporate call to action. But those are the 2 styles. Okay, so here's a sample prompt. This is a nice personal expository example that I use to show this with. It says, this is the wealth versus happiness prompt. It says, if you were able to choose between wealth and happiness, which would you choose? All right, nice, pretty interesting question, you might say. So the thesis answers that question. It says, if given the choice between wealth and happiness, I would choose wealth. Cash money, took the money, right? Well, this is the answer to the question that we chose that this essay would argue, which means that if we're going to write body paragraphs, the body paragraphs would explain why wealth should be chosen over happiness. And then if we're going to write a conclusion paragraph, which is a call to action, then we're going to tell the reader to do something as it pertains to wealth, as it pertains to what we chose. Because it only makes sense to tell them to do something, call to action, give them suggestive advice of something to do as it pertains to what we chose. So since we chose wealth, we're going to tell them to do something pertaining to wealth, right? Okay, so I let students know that every good call to action should be 2 things. Number 1, it should be specific, which means you tell them exactly what you want them to do, and try to give them a reference or 2, like an exact reference, maybe a name of something they can use to get started. And then every good call to action should also be instructional. All right, so if they're, if you tell them what they should do and they're excited about doing it, and then they could be like, how do I get started? So that's where you want to give them an instruction or 2 to get them started. And so they know how to get going. Don't have to give them a full-fledged manual or anything, but just an instruction or 2 about how to get started, so they, know what to do to go ahead and get going, doing whatever it is you told them to do, right? So every good call to action should be both specific and instructional. All right, so here's the sample. Since we explained in the body paragraphs why wealth should be chosen over happiness, it only made sense to give the reader suggestive advice of something to do Tell them to do something pertaining to wealth, since that's what we chose. So here's the example here. I'm just going to read it, get it out in the open. It says, gaining wealth is very important. Therefore, try enrolling in a savings account. So that's one call to action right there, telling them to do something. Try enrolling in a savings account. By doing this, you can earn extra interest on the money you save. You can check with your local banking company for different savings accounts they may offer. Also, try investing in stocks in the stock market. So there's another call to action right there, telling them to invest in the stock market, right? Many invest in the S&P 500. This is a great way to build your finances. Wealth is important for the future. So we gave two different things for the reader to try. We told them to try enrolling in a savings account, and we told them to try investing in stocks in the stock market, right? Well, you'll notice in blue, because we had just said try enrolling in a savings account. You'll notice in blue it says you can check with your local banking company for different savings accounts they may offer. What's that? That's an instruction. We're telling them how to get started, rolling in a savings account, you know? And then down here, we said try investing in stocks in the stock market, but then we give you the reference of the S&P 500, which is the name of a specific stock index. So we're being specific, giving you a resource so that you can have a frame of reference if you want to get started, right? So that's what I mean when I say be specific and be instructional, okay? So this is a nice example of a call to action for a personal expository writing assignment. But you also can use call to action for persuasives. And I found that sometimes it might feel like the setup is a little different because students, when they're writing persuasives, they're saying to themselves, well, who do I address my call to action towards? In other words, who do I give suggestive advice to? Who can this be for? This advice I'm going to give. All right, I'm going to tell who am I going to tell to do something, right? So I let students know, just like you can consider all involved when coming up with topic sentences to write about, you can also consider all involved when determining who you're going to address your call to action towards. So, when you write a persuasive essay, there are different, or when you determine your thesis, there are different entities that could be affected by the decision you're making. And so that's what I mean when I say consider all involved. Consider who all is affected by the decision you're making, because those groups or entities are who you can give suggestive advice to. And so this will make more sense in just a moment. Let's look at this sample. This is a good persuasive essay sample prompt that I use to introduce persuasives. This is the grade retention prompt. It says, grade retention has become a major issue in American education. There are some school systems that allow students to move to the next grade level without achieving passing scores in their current grade level. There are students who have failing grades that are allowed to move on to the next grade level. On the other hand, there are also school systems that require students to repeat the same grade level if they do not have passing grades for their current grade level. This has been a debate in the education system. Should students who have failing grades be required to repeat their current grade level, or should students who have failing grades be allowed to move up to the next grade level? So they're just asking the question, students that don't have passing scores, should they be able to move up to the next grade, or should they have to remain in the current grade and repeat that grade? So the thesis answers this question. All right, the thesis says students who have not achieved passing scores should not advance to the next level of grade. Okay, so this one says no, they should not get to go. So what we're going to do to determine who to address the call to action towards, right? We're going to say who all is affected by this decision we're making. Who all is affected by the decision of whether or not kids with failing grades go to the next grade or not? Who's affected by that? So we say, you know what? The students with failing grades, they're affected by that decision. Teachers of students with failing grades, they could be affected by that decision. Parents of students with failing grades, they could be affected by that decision. And even the passing students could be affected by that decision. And so when we consider all of these different groups, we got to say to ourselves, who does it make sense to give suggestive advice to? Because we could give suggestive advice to any of these groups. We could tell any of these groups to do something. Well, considering what our thesis says, it says they should not advance. We decided, you know what? It's most natural to give suggestive advice to the students and most natural to give suggestive advice to the parents. Okay? So that's what we did. We decided, okay, we'll tell the students to do something and we'll tell the parents to do something that corresponds to what we chose in the thesis, right? So let's look at the example. All right, so here we give suggestive advice to the students and then we give one bit of suggestive advice to the parents. I'm going to read this just to get it out in the open, okay? So it says, students who struggle are encouraged to really consider, and once again, we're telling them to do something, right? Students who struggle are encouraged to really consider what causes them to earn poor grades and make adjustments. One major recommendation is to study correctly. Many students know they should study but are not always aware of good study methods. One factor is time. Try setting aside a daily time frame like 45 minutes strictly to improve a weaker scale of subjective weakness. When studying subjects of trivia and memorization, it is important for students to quiz themselves or have another person quiz them. Okay, so we're telling the students specific advice about how to study and prepare, right? Now the parents. Parents can help quiz the student by removing notes and study guides and requesting the student to answer various questions to ensure they have memorized the content. Okay, so that's the recommendation for the parents. Okay, in subjects of formula and principle, students are encouraged to implement different ways of solving questions to determine why each method works. Study resources like iExcel and Khan Academy. Remember, we're being specific, right? Study resources like iExcel and Khan Academy are great resources that students can use to prepare and successfully improve. Often, these kinds of extra initiatives are necessary for every student, regardless of their grades, to succeed academically. All efforts taken by the education system should encourage this process. So once again, you see how we're giving suggestive advice to the students and to the parents. All right. Hopefully that's pretty clear. All right. So just a few last minute keys, things to remember. You want to remember the two styles of call to action. You got personal, which tells the reader to do something for themselves. And then you have corporate, which tells the reader to do something that could evolve or affect a larger group of people or demographic. Then you have the reminder to remember to be specific, which means to give exact references to things and tell the reader exactly what you want them to do. And to be instructional, which means give them a step or two about how to get started. And of course, consider all involved when determining who you're going to address your call to action towards. Okay, so consider everybody who's affected by the decision, and that will allow you different groups that you can address your call to action to. You can address your call to action and give suggestive advice to any entity that is affected by the decision that you're making. All right, let's switch back over. And there we are. Hopefully that was pretty simple. I hope that was pretty straightforward. I do encourage practicing it. It's a great conclusion paragraph style, great way to close an essay. Okay, feel free to let me know if you have any questions and commentary, feedback, all of that stuff. In the meantime, I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.